that that child born had to be insured. That means an insurance company made record of whatever that child's name that the child was given, and it made name of the date that the child was born. It has reference to who was the white owner of that child born. So here in the northern continent, many of your lineage charts research will be done by getting records from the insurance company. And that's not going to be an easy task. Most of the insurance companies in this country were founded or profited from the slave trade. And so they're not going to be very forthcoming with that information. You will have to sue insurance companies to get the archives, to get those access to that older information, but they do have it. So, that's going to create a little bit of a situation because you have insurance companies that are doing illegal things, and, it is illegal to destroy the insurance policies, insurance information for certain entities. But, what is a law today can be changed to being not legal tomorrow. So you're just going to have to deal with a lot of the same deceptive actions, the same demonic actions, the same perverted actions that whites had back in the day. You're going to find them displaying those same actions today, profited off of the slave trade. When they're caught like a deer in the headlight, they're going to try and find some way to get out of this. And so, and the more often that they're caught, the worse the situation is going to look, in which case they're going to start doing things to try and minimize the damage. So, that's the aspect that we are working on. And then, of course, the main thing is once you start dealing with this, today we're dealing with the lineage charts that we're helping them create in the different churches. And, you have a lot of people at one time that are starting their lineage charts and getting, starting to get that information and finding out things that they never really even thought about. But next is getting the politicians involved. We sent out a intro to the initiative to the Negro politicians, and a couple of them were like, I'm kind of concerned about this because I have the same last name as one of the other representatives. So, what do I do if I find out that that white representative, their family, owned my family? What am I supposed to do about that? And those are questions that you are going to have to ask, and unfortunately, a lot of it you won't find out the answer to it until you actually get to that bridge and actually see what you do, because you can speculate about how you're going to feel or what you're going to do with that information or now that you know. But until you actually get there, you don't actually know. It's all just speculation. So we'll be dealing with the politicians. Many of them have been on the sidelines in the shadows and basically MIA when it comes to the reparations issue. They try to stay away from it. Some of them don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But they are now going to be sort of forced to have to face the reparations issue. And, of course, we have had, in the cultural community, we've had a lot of cultural persons that died still trying to address this reparation issue. We recently had a very popular reparations person, and she had worked on reparations for most of her adult life, and she died tragically in an accident. But, she died not having seen those reparations come to the forefront. So there's this push, and then, after she died, we basically saw the same comfort zone type stuff in the reparations community, because they went right back to debating words and, posturing who knows the most. And, there's, in the course of a day, there's probably a good 200, 300 discussions among so-called intellectual blacks and cultural blacks about reparations. But that's all it is. It's just discussion. And then when they did have an opportunity after 100 years to actually move it forward and get a politician to say, okay, well, I'm willing to, to address this situation, they once again allowed themselves to be steered, to be tricked, to be, bamboozled into agreeing not to push the reparations issue, but to push a study of reparations. So you'll hear about H.R. 40, which is not payment issue, is not a reparations advancement issue. It is merely a stall tactic, if you will, that says, well, we're not agreeing to pay reparations. We're not agreeing to even bring the issue of payment to the floor. What we're agreeing to is to launch a study of reparations. And part of that study, of course, is the three questions. Should reparations be paid? Who should it be paid to? And how it should be paid? Who should be paying it? So, the thing is that reparations have been studied since the first Negro got to freedom. Now that you're in freedom, how do you get, compensation for all those years of degradation? And so it's been studied for 550 years. You have, there was a reparations study during the homicide situation. There was a reparations study, in 1863 with the so-called Emancipation Proclamation. It lasted for 2 years. And then there was another study in 1865 when it was ratified. It was, it lasted for 10 years. And you've had study after study after study. But a study is something that people do especially politicians, governments, that they do to avoid dealing with the situation for a long period of time. So if they agree to a study, well, that study can last 10, 15, 20 years. And they take however long they need, to stall and wait for another generation to drop the subject, leave it alone. And that's what you've seen over the years with the reparations situation. And you talk about the reparations that was paid to Jews for the things that America involved themselves in. The Jews went after the Nazis. They went after the Swiss. They went after all these different people that profited and participated in the killing of Jews. But